My name is R. Crosby Lyles, and this is News from the Can. And I got to tell you, this is really obnoxious and annoying. It bugs me, and maybe it might not bug anybody else. On the left here is Greta Thunberg, and on the right is Michael Mann, distinguished professor of climate science. I think maybe even atmospheric chemistry at Penn State, right? The dude's name is not anywhere on. I'm like, okay, I think it's. I'm pretty sure the guy's name is Michael Mann. But you know, there's a movie producer, a dude named Michael Mann also. He's got the same name, and I'm like, yeah, that's the cat's name. They don't have his name. Climate change activist Greta Thunberg says the climate goals, blah blah blah. Biden invented, and okay, and there's like nothing in here, not even a stitch, that's Michael Mann, distinguished professor, and these are all his books in the background, the hockey stick and the climate wars and all that, and he's been out loud about climate change for many years, many decades actually. Very well known. I mean, whenever there's a fire in Australia, dude's down there selling some books, because climate change is a racket, like any other racket. It's real. Don't get me wrong, because we're going to get to that in a second. It's real. But it's also, this seems to be this fabulous opportunity to sell windmills. And windmills are a racket because they're basically, windmills and solar arrays are a racket because the energy density is so small from wind and solar. I was just watching Elon Musk on another video the other day. He's talking about how, with 100 square miles, you could with a solar array, 100 square miles in size, you could power the entire United States, and that's all cool and everything, but there's infrastructure involved in that, and there's switch gear, which is the same thing for windmills, and it's all this switch gear, and it's very infrastructure dependent, and it requires a lot of maintenance. Those turbine blades get super beat up, because they travel at like a couple hundred miles an hour. The tips of the blades travel very fast. And you're talking about hail and hitting birds and everything else, and they kill birds. And, and I've seen these things, cats, house cats kill billions of birds. Yeah, but they don't kill apex predators. Nobody cares about finches, man. We're not talking about finches. We're talking about eagles and endangered bats and shit like that. And it's just like totally unnecessary. Why? Because all you got to do, just to digress a little bit, I'm just going to do what I do. I came up with this idea, and it's the devices developed by the Krauss. I don't know if they're brothers or how they're related, but they're these two guys, the Krausses, back in the 70s. That basically, like you can see it. It's a hidden energy device hidden since the 70s, and it's this really interesting device, to extend the. To make combined cycle power plants essentially more efficient, and stuff. And so I did some research on this and found out that it's already been, it's been patented. And then there's a guy holding the patent now that's going to be enforced for a few years. A guy named Sigenfuss, who's a well driller. And I'm like, I started looking into it and working with it, and it's fascinating and interesting and stuff like that. But what really sort of like stopped me from doing that is that I saw some information about nuclear, and when you look at it, you realize that nuclear uranium has an energy density that's like millions of times more dense than fucking gasoline. And the reason that we use gasoline in cars is because of the energy density. The energy density of gasoline just blows away any lithium-ion battery you can possibly imagine. I mean, it's just more energy dense. That's why we do it. We don't do it. It's not really a conspiracy necessarily, but, you know, I mean, gasoline is just sort of like, it's just easier to burn. And when you burn down gasoline, you lighten the load of the vehicle, and it, you know, you can travel further. Whereas with a battery, the density of the battery doesn't change. The weight of the battery doesn't change at all. So, you know, you just start looking at things. Everything's a fucking racket. Everything's a racket. So here's Michael Mann, and he looks pretty happy, and he's selling books. That's all his books in the back there, the hockey stick, Michael E. Mann, and the other one, the New Climate War, and all that kind of stuff. And everybody's got a dog in the fight, and even the fight is highly remunerative. People out there going back and forth about climate change and stuff like that. People getting paid huge money to do PR on both sides and all that, and I really don't give a fuck. I don't get paid. I can't get paid to do that kind of shit. I'm a fucking convicted felon. You know, I have there's no possibility of ever getting remunerated on any of this shit. I just want to tell the truth because I'm just sick of the bullshit. I'm sick of it. It's just, I'm just sick of the bullshit. If you're not doing nuclear, burning coal is the worst goddamn shit anybody could ever fucking burn in the universe. The real planet killer is not CO2. The real planet killer is acid rain. And they say, well, CO2 produces carbonic acid and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, man, but it's about rates. It's about the rate that it's going into the ocean and how much you got to put in there. The most acidity you can ever get out of CO2 is like 5.6, right? And that's if you totally saturate the oceans, and by the time you get anywhere even a smidgen, a fraction of saturating the oceans with CO2, everything on planet Earth's going to be dead anyway from asphyxiation. You can't do it. It's impossible. But you put some sulfuric acid in there. Sulfuric acid, nitric acid has a pH of 0. In the 80s, human beings produced half of all of the sulfur emissions on the planet. That means the other half was natural sources like volcanoes and stuff. So that's like pretty prodigious. We were doing damage, and acid rain kills everything. So that's the thing you want to that's the reason that climate change has not gone off the rails yet. Because back in the 80s, we did something about sulfur emissions. Which is, they're trying to fucking burn everybody out with this whole, boiling earth thing. And which is where I part company with a lot of these people, is that they're going to say, well, you're going to turn the earth into Venus. And it's like, dude, you can't turn the earth into Venus. You can't do it. Not with a little carbon dioxide. Can't do it. Period. Can't do it. And I'm gonna show you right here. I'm gonna show you data you can look at yourself to prove it to you. Can't do it. Can't turn the earth. The rate of spin of the earth is too great. We're too far away from the sun. You can heat up the planet. You can get a PTM, but you're not going to get it with CO2 alone. The way you're going to do that is you're going to change the acidity. You're going to lower the acidity of the oceans by other means, by sulfur emissions. So large volcanic eruption. And yes, all these things can happen. We could get hit by a large, this is how it's happened in the past. The PTM, the Great Dying, and all that stuff. The Earth was hit by asteroids and had large volcanic eruptions that spewed a bunch of sulfur compounds and large quantities of methane and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere all at once. The Great Dying, it was bad. As bad as bad gets. It's not funny. It's like 96% of all life in the oceans died out. But 30% of terrestrial life survived, which is astonishing. And the follow-up to the Permian-Triassic extinction was the Jurassic, which is like Life City. So, and it's not, I don't want to like poo-poo anything, but we get distracted with dumb shit. It's like they overblow the dumb stuff that's easily like debunkable. You're not gonna get a Venus Earth. So that's easily debunkable, and people just say, "Yeah, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about." And here's Greta Thunberg, right? Sweet child, damn. That this is the unfortunate. Greta Thunberg is an unfortunate casualty of all of this narrative fuckery that's been going on in the world, And this is what happens. Kids get sucked into our bullshit, and they're fucking damaged. They get damaged. I was damaged when I was a kid. I saw, when I was a little kid, I saw Soylent Green and shit, and I was convinced. I didn't think I knew that we as human beings, I was born in the 60s, so by, the time I was 10 years old in the early 70s, I was convinced. I didn't think I knew that the human beings were just going to kill the whole planet. So, more than carbon dioxide, there's things we're going to have to do. We're going to have to curb some stuff, sure. But, plastic is probably worse, in a way. But there's certain shit, there's certain knowns that, pollution-wise, you just can't have. You cannot fucking pollute the planet with dioxin. Why? Because it's persistent in the biome. Okay? Carbon dioxide, yeah, it hangs around for a pretty good little while, but it does not bind itself to the physiology of the biome, of the animals. Doesn't wind up in your fat cells. You know what I'm saying? And these things, pollution with things like, this, decidedly, we've known this for a long time. And, things like DDT, persistent chemical pollution, acid rain, these are known. That they're easy to solve and have been solved already. But people get caught up in saying, well, that CO2, a certain amount of CO2 is gonna send us into a tailspin that is going to cause the Earth to turn into Venus. And why Venus? Because that's the scariest thing. It's scarier than snow. Snow's not that scary. Snow is white and fluffy, and you can ski on it, and dogs play in it. And it's fun. Snow's not really that scary to people. Unless you're talking about so much of it that it crushes your fucking house and buries the entire continent that you live on. And kills all the crops and stuff. You know what I mean? Blots out the sun for periods of time because of cloud cover. So, and it's complicated. Climate change is complicated. It's not like, it's not black and white, and it's not really, you kind of got to parse through the stuff and explain it to people, and it's not immediate, and it's going to take a while and stuff like this. And so they're trying to generate action, right? And there's a lot of different actors out there that are trying to use it to produce a revolution, it's a wedge issue, to divide people. Yet another wedge issue. There's so many fucking wedge issues out there, it's ridiculous. And, children like Greta Thunberg, and I think she might be like 17 years old now or something. She's very young looking. They get sucked into this shit. She got paid 2 million euros for some sort of award or something. And I guess she donated some of it to charity and whatnot. 2 million euros, man. That's 2 million. That's a lot of ho-hos and ding-dings. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of trips to Disneyland. So she's a little old for Disneyland, you know. But nevertheless, you know, cutting down forests, you know, that's bad. Shouldn't be doing that and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, it's a racket. Michael Mann, he's all, you know, he's been doing this for a long time. He's probably right about a bunch of stuff. But you know what? Dude is selling books. He's got his books right there, right there, and he gets paid from every book that gets sold. So the more freaked out you are, the more likely you are going to be to read a book, to buy a book, read about it. And if you study up on climate change, even a little bit about, you know, the effects of climate change and stuff like that, you know, you will find that a lot, you know, you're going to find that there's more to it, you know, and it's, some people will do a little bit of research and they'll go, oh yeah, fuck you. You know, it's just some bullshit. It's just something that the so-called liberals are into and stuff like that. And my whole point is that shit is so fucking destructive. You know, this whole thing about boiling death, you know, Al Gore is actually very intelligent man. You know, he's a very intelligent man. He's a policy wonk. I like Al Gore. You know, I like Hillary Clinton. They've painted Hillary Clinton into this, she's some sort of evil, you know, thing or something. It's totally ridiculous. You know, she's a policy wonk too. And the reason they hate her is because she wanted price controls on medications back in the 90s. And motherfuckers have made trillions of dollars on the elevated cost of medication from Obamacare. You know, changed formulation slightly. Medications that used to cost me $17 10 years ago now cost $145. Things like, you know, Synthroid, you know, that used to cost like $3, $8. No, really, to $3 or $8 with no copay. That's just your cash price. That's what you pay for it back then, and now it's like $100-something. They're just rapists. They're just raping the shit out of us. They're really raping the federal government. So there's that, and everything's a fucking racket. It's sickening. I'm tired of it. This poor girl here is been sucked into it, and furthermore, she's from Sweden, you know, and Sweden is this economic powerhouse. Every fucking thing they make, right? Like they're in the tool, hardened tool steel business. They make a lot of parts for windmills and shit like that. Vattenfall, which is a Swedish company, runs power generation for like most of Europe. They own the biggest, largest wind field in the world. That's right off the coast of Britain. So, you know, and the fact that Greta Thunberg comes from Sweden and the same place, and her family is actors and stuff, I'll tell you, it really doesn't look good. It doesn't. And these are nice people. I don't want to disparage these people at all, but, you know, let's have an honest discussion. Now, having said all that, let me give you the fucking bad news. Let me give you the bad news. Now, we might not have a boiling death, but this right here is happening. This is I've said it a million times. You watch my channel. This is the Copernicus Atmospheric Monitoring Service. That's 1,000 parts per million. This is at 50 hectopascals, which is about 60,000 feet elevation around the equator. That's 1,000 parts per million. Here's something really interesting right there. You see this little blob right here? That's from volcanic activity. That's interaction with the chemical species coming out of the probably water vapor, if I had to guess, coming out of some of those volcanoes right around Indonesia, which I can't remember the name of. Krakatau is one of them. There's a couple of other ones. They've had some eruptions recently, and you can see that footprint right there. But anyway, that's 1,000 parts per million on a very wide swath right around the equator. And that's going to do something. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. Now here I'm going to point out an interesting feature. You'll notice right over Siberia, it's a little bit, the concentration is a little bit lighter at that level. Just for reference, here's the total column, which in a way doesn't look as bad. This is a very important point. You will notice that the concentration is less over the southern hemisphere than it is over the northern hemisphere. But crucially, surface level, this is really important. Plants eat the shit out of carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide just loves water. It aggregates water droplets, makes clouds, and it just gets sucked right out of the atmosphere in the lower atmosphere. It just does. You know what I mean? And that's where your money is right there. If you're going to heat up the water temperatures and do all of that cyclical shit that they talk about, that's where it's going to go down. And you can see all this carbon dioxide here, and it oscillates throughout the day in 24-hour periods. You can see it go way up at night and way down during the day. So this is what's happening at the lower levels. And I've said this before, and it bears repeating, needs to be repeated. As you go up 850 hectopascals, I think it's about 1,200 feet, something like that, about 1,000 feet, a little bit more. The concentration goes up a little bit more, 500 hectopascals. 500 hectopascals is also where they measure geopotential height. It's very important because that allows you to see air masses. I got that right here. I think it's right here. This is geopotential height. That's 500 hectopascals. The blue is, so it's the level of a pressure, 500 hectopascals. At the blue here is about 4,950 meters. The orange is 5,950 meters. 5.95 kilometers, 4.95 kilometers in elevation. Height is this like upper level high here that's producing some extraordinarily to hear them tell it, warm temperatures, which is right there. So it's a little hot there, but this pink here, where you see this Russia, Siberia, that's like 20 degrees below this 1979-2000 baseline. But anyway, don't let me get away from it here. What was I going to tell you? Okay, so here we are, 500 hectopascals. Now this is at a lower level. I think this is about between 5,000 to 6,000 meters, which is about 18,000 feet right in there. It's closer to the earth. Now, again, with the analogy, the blanket thing, when you're going to sleep at night and it's cold out, you hold the blanket in, you stay warmer. You hold it out away from yourself. Air is allowed to pass through. Photons are allowed to leave. And actually, when greenhouse gases are further out, it actually causes global cooling. This is important because, so this is closer in, and as you go out, right? So that's a lot of CO2 there. That's like 1,000 parts per million. You know, something stepped off in recent times over the last couple of years. Now, as you go up 300 hectopascals, it's a little bit further up. Like I think it's like 25,000 feet, 30,000 feet, something like that. It's a little bit less, right? And then you get up to 50 hectopascals, and it coalesces around the equator. Now, why is that important? Because of this idea that I've heard before, and it was kind of a head scratcher. You know, you talk about there's something called polar amplification, but there's also something about where supposedly the temperature of the Earth equalizes between the poles and the equator, which necessarily means that the equator cools down. And if you look at, now this oscillates. These temperatures oscillate. Sea surface temperature anomaly. These temperatures oscillate, but you will notice that there's a lot of anomalously cool water right around the equator. Now that does oscillate over in the Eastern Pacific. That will oscillate. So, and there's something going on up here where warm water seems to be piling up right off of Nova Scotia, you know, the upper eastern United States. But that's a little, you know, there's a mixing issue. It looks like it's a vertical mixing issue. And this anomalously cool temperatures in the Indian Ocean, a lot of this stuff, like I said, oscillates. It has a biannually, will oscillate every 2 years. It will change back and forth. A lot of times this blue hole right here that opens up, and some of these blue holes down here that may have to do with the AMOC, the Meridional Overturning Current and stuff like that. Said it before. You know, you kind of got to repeat yourself anyway when you're doing a topic. But what that necessarily means is that while the pole is heating up, this CO2 and furthermore, you know, this came from methane. I'm going to get to this in a second. A lot of methane over the past couple of years got launched into the stratosphere because that's where it's going to go. It's a light molecule. You know, it's got it has a molecular weight of like 18, something like that. So it's pretty light. It goes right for the stratosphere. Produces, because it's a reaction body, it's going to produce ozone as it goes up. Ozone is also a greenhouse gas. You're going to have a lot of ozone. There's your ozone forecast. You know, I mean, that's a ridiculous amount of ozone. This is the total column of ozone right there. You know, that's a ridiculous, and that's from methane. That's from natural gas leaks, from fracking and things like that. And also a lot of methane comes from farming and rice farming in India and China. True. Notice that there is a dearth, that there is not much ozone in some of these areas where actually there's a lot of methane wafting off, because that methane turns around and reacts with the ozone, and it launches that water vapor into the stratosphere, which, you know, cloud cover, ice crystals and things like that will block. Has an albedo effect. So there are a lot of knock-on effects here, but it's not, you know, it's not cut and dried. We're not going to turn into Venus. It's going to be, you know, I said it in my last video, we had a record number of storms. I mean, like a ridiculous, ran out of names. Like, you know, we ended up with into the, what is it, they use Greek or something like that? And it was like 4 or 5 Greek name storms, you know, Edda and shit like that, because they ran out of names. So, yeah, it's going down. Heavy rain and stuff like that, and you can go on and on. I mean, just look at the news. Heavy rain, heavy snow, and this is fascinating. Okay, so there's your methane. And this bit here. So this cold patch that's been pretty persistent over Siberia. In the United States is a little bit different. We've got a lot of water on both sides, on the Atlantic and Pacific side. been very snowy in Japan. You know, northern Japan is one of the snowiest areas on the planet. I think probably the snowiest area. And what is that? Hokkaido or something? Somebody that you can watch that keeps a lot of track of that is Adapt 2030, David Debine's channel. And I don't necessarily agree with his narrative, and that's okay. You know, he's got his shtick. He does his thing. That's cool. But he keeps track of a lot of this stuff that's going on. That's why I'm subscribed to him and I watch him all the time. And you know what? Man's got to make a living. I guess. So, you know, the only people who really, you know, have trouble making a living are if you're like, you know, you ever get in trouble with the law, forget about it. Well, you know, so, whatever. But anyway, the reason I have this up is I want to touch on this real quick. So there's Greta Thunberg. The link is in the description. You can watch what they have to say. You know, Biden is, you know, bringing back some of the Obama stuff, you know, which is good, I guess. But this is a problem. And I sort of mischaracterized something because of the way it looked to me on the map, and I should have kind of dug into it a little bit more, and I didn't. But it's kind of a correction. This retired oil exec wants to plug millions of abandoned wells across the United States. So apparently, and this, I'll put this link in the description also. It was in my last video. It's pretty easy to find. A lot of oil wells in L.A., apparently. California's urbane oil fields. So anyway, this guy's working in Montana. And one of the things that I said was, you know, I was looking at the map when you go over here and you look at methane and you just do global, right? And I looked at the surface level, which is kind of telling because it tells you where it's coming from. So there you see an ass pile of methane coming off of China and a lot of it coming off of India. But also there's all these little dots out here in Russia, and this is the Middle East off of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Jordan and Iraq, Iran. You can see it coming off the southern tip of Florida because they've got a massive pipeline that comes down there, and they do liquid liquefied natural gas down there, and of course in the Texas area and stuff like that. So I looked at this. The thrust of this video with this cat here is that it's going down in Montana, and I looked at this and I said, well, that looks more like the Dakotas, because you know there's a lot of fracking that goes on in the Dakotas. Well, I kind of spoke too soon, because really what you can change where you want to look here on CAMS Copernicus, which is the Copernicus Atmospheric Monitoring Service. This thing, by the way, and I've said it before many times, this is designed to shame countries, to shame polluters because you can see this is one of the most technologically advanced satellites in the world that images reactive gases, which is no easy trick. And I'm telling you, these guys, the men and women who designed this stuff and built it, are just, you know, it's an amazing thing that they've done here. But let me just hit play, and you can see, yep, that's Montana. And the thrust of what they're saying is that over the past 20 years, the oil industry has left behind millions of uncapped wells. And that's what this guy's doing. He's going around capping oil wells. I mean, like, they literally just hit and ran. I did a video, one of the first videos that I ever made, that basically said that the Iraq war, complete with 9/11 and all that, was really just an effort to raise the raised the base price of oil because the base price of oil was like $17 a barrel in 2002. And at $17 a barrel, you can't, you're not going to make money from fracking. By 2006, after they started the war with Iraq and iron-booted Iraq, the base price of oil was up to $145 a barrel, and the oil companies, ExxonMobil and those people, were registering record profits. Just look it up, 2006. And that's, of course, before 2008 when everything crashed, and it kind of sort of stayed high, and then, it's like you say, well, okay, well, we're making money, and who gives a shit if 100,000 Iraqis died? Who gives a shit, right? God damn. ISIS sets fire to oil wells. They got, oil wells in Syria, and, So the oil for food program is one of the things that Saddam Hussein had. One of the narratives that they float is that they killed Saddam Hussein because he was going to take take Iraq off of the petrodollars. He was going to start buying and selling oil with. He was going to start selling oil with euros. He was going to switch over to euros. Yeah, maybe. But he was also selling oil for cash, and that was lowering the price of oil. Vice President Dick Cheney was the CEO of Halliburton Corporation, the fucking biggest oil services company in the world. So oil went from $17 a barrel in 2001 or 2 to $145 a barrel because they went to war as a direct effect of the war. Do the math. And then the fuckers go in, and there are millions, literally millions of uncapped, abandoned oil wells across the United States. And this is a Copernicus satellite looking down on the continental United States that is spewing out methane gas from all these different sources. And yep, that's Montana. Sure is. Montana, and probably bordering on North and South Dakota there. And of course, all the way up in Canada. California. Look at all that methane boiling off of California. So Texas, forget about it. So there's all those uncapped oil wells just abandoned. It was a hit and run. See, anytime, there's the Reagan administration, the Bush administration, and the Trump administration, their big thing coming in was deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. And anytime you hear the word deregulate, there's going to be a fucking robbery. Some shit's going to get kicked over, some shit's going to get stolen. This is a classic example of, this is a robbery that took place between the Bush administration and the Trump administration. They went in because they were just, they opened the stable, and these people just went out and just raped the earth. They got contaminated radioactive oil socks laying all over the fucking place, all over every reservation in the countryside up in North Dakota. It's not funny. It's fucking terrible. Look at Florida. Look at all that mess down there. Yeah, that's from liquefied natural gas. Big giant methane natural gas pipeline running down the middle of the state that carries 1 billion. It's like 1 billion cubic feet a day or some shit like that. Just some ridiculous. You want to see something like really crazy? Probably shouldn't talk about it. See a big pipeline, that goes off. It's like a fucking ridiculous amount of damage. It's just insane. So there it is. That's sort of like undisputed. You probably would want to call, the European Space Agency and say, well, what's up with this? And argue with them about it. I don't know. But my advice to Greta Thunberg and Michael Mann, just shoot everybody over to Copernicus satellite. And there it is. And they probably don't do that because back to back, when I do that, I say, okay, and then while you're at it, when you do that, go to climatereanalyzer.org with the baseline temperature between 1979 and 2000. Tell you what, it doesn't look very much like Venus to me. I mean, now, there's some anomalously warm temperatures there, but it's mixed in right along the equator. There it is. So, okay, now, the upshot of that, right? Okay, so you see the cooling. We just went through the thing with the carbon dioxide. There's your carbon dioxide, which is more dense. Yeah. Oh, shit. Well, come on. I wish the thing wouldn't jump around like that, too. It's more dense in different regions. At 500 hectopascals, it's more dense near the North Pole. It's not very dense at all down south in the Antarctic. But it's also more denser than that around the equator at 50 hectopascals further up in the atmosphere. So you're going to see a tendency. So this is like, now this is easy to understand why it's cooler along the equator. And the white that you see there, that's nominal between 1979 and 2000. So little wrinkles here to understand is this deal here. These super cold temperatures that have been lately, and hot temperatures. They had some extremely hot fires and things like that during the summer. Even in places like, I think, Finland and northern Sweden and things like that, it was hot, it was dry, 100-degree temperatures. Again, so that greenhouse gas is closer to the surface, closer to the pole, closer to the North Pole, and further out along the equator. And that's when you get that equipotential. And the upshot of that, before I get too far in the weeds on that, because there's one thing I want to. The upshot of that is that this is when you look at the geopotential height, you're looking at the height of 500 hectopascals. There's about 500 millibars. 1 atmosphere of pressure at the Earth's surface is right about 1 bar. 1 bar and change, somewhere in there. More or less, plus or minus. So that's about half. 500 hectopascals is about 500 millibars. It's about half. And it allows you to see the polar vortex, which is this entire blob here. Now, typically, what the polar vortex looks like is that there's a big. The blue is sort of like an upper level low. Typically, what you'll see these blue blobs. One of them will be right over the Baffin Island, centered right over Baffin Island, will kind of anchor there, and the other one will be right over the Chukchi Sea, I think, somewhere up here above. Above Siberia, eastern Siberia. And so what you're seeing here, and this is mid-January, right, that the polar vortex is breaking up. It's disorganized. And this is one of the things that they've talked about ad nauseum for decades now, is the collapse of the polar vortex, which allows cold air to travel further south and warm air to travel further north. And you can see this pocket here. This orange blob right here between Baffin Island and Greenland. I can't remember right off the top of my head what is that? The Baffin Bay? Is that Baffin Bay there? Is that what the? So yeah, Baffin Bay. Right there. So yeah, right there. abnormally warm, that area. It's like, it's like a trail, but it's abnormally warm there. Greenland is 9,000 feet of snow and ice, basically. And of course, I always like to look at the actual temperature because, and the reason I do that, and it's very important to point out, is especially when you look at sea surface temperatures and things like that. It's okay. It is, and when it comes to air temperature, typically you see these temperatures when it's below a certain amount or above a certain amount. That can have a tendency to be a cogent area of a particular temperature, which is basically like an energy level, right? Air temperature, it's a cogent band of air temperature, which will lead to wind surface, upper level winds that will affect, temperature differentials create weather. And so here you see this is the jet stream. Pretty solid right now. And you kind of see this right here. There's almost like an anti-vortex going on right there in Baffin Bay, which is kind of fascinating because, like I said, this Greenland is a large object, so it acts in a way. It's like a block or a weather vane in a sense. It's going to affect the weather. It's going to affect how air moves across this part of the world. You don't have that over on this side over here. It's a little different. So, but anyway, there's your that's going to affect your temperature differentials are going to affect the flow of air around the planet. So you're looking at a lot of these effects are because of the flow of air. This colder pocket right here, now that just so happens to be where the blue hole is. This is sea surface temperature anomaly, and this is less like a cogent thing. It's because the sea surface temperatures are stratified in a way that does not match up with sea surface temperature anomaly picture. Right. Now you can kind of see you can see a trend there, but you're not really looking at something that's going to create a physical current. Temperatures, temperature differentials drive currents, drive air currents. In this particular case, it doesn't look all that compelling. The sea surface temperature anomaly looks a lot more compelling. But we're not talking about boiling temperatures here. We're talking about, the sea surface temperature of the blue there is 5 degrees Celsius. The blue is 10 degrees. So, it's just not, it's a question. There's a question. It doesn't look good. The way that these water temperatures, these sea surface temperatures are sort of like anomalously warm sea surface temperatures are piling up in this particular spot, and that this bit here, right in the middle, it's a little bit cooler. And that can be problematic because when those temperatures, sea surface temperatures, are usually warmer or supposed to be, because that's where the AMOC dives down. That's where the North Atlantic Current, the Mary Donald overturning current, dives down and gives up its heat. And if you have a blue hole there, that's indicative of that current possibly shutting down. Now, if you have a pile up here, right off of Maine, between the Carolinas and Maine, right offshore here, of warm temperatures, anomalously warm temperatures, and it looks like what you have is, it looks like it's backing up. Is kind of what that looks like. But I always want to look at the actual temperature, the actual sea surface temperature, so that you can see how the water is actually moving, what the energy levels are actually like, and how it's actually moving. So the shit's hitting the fan. I mean, that's just bottom line. There's a lot of volcanic activity out there. People are going to want to blame the cold temperatures on that. And hey, maybe. But bottom line is, what about all this? To anybody out there that's talking about what's this thing with solar wind, some sort of compression rain or something, or you know what I'm talking about? Getting ozone from solar wind and stuff like that, because because of the pole shifts and things like this. Yeah, that's cool, but gee whiz, guys, that's a lot of methane. You'll see this also here. Globally, band of methane, 50 hectopascals, right around. Oh, and this is interesting. There's a dearth of methane right over Siberia, where there's also the colder temperatures, and it's almost like a chicken and the egg thing, where it may be, this could be a self-feeding, one of those self-feeding regressive loops. Feedback loop, if you will. This is a sea surface pressure, air pressure. So yeah, high temperature prevailing over Siberia, high temperature prevailing over the Baffin Bay area. So as when you hit this button here, you can see that this is a cogent area of less carbon dioxide, and it's sort of like rotating around right over Siberia. Also methane, this blue here, that's less, that the concentration is less. It's like between 1600 and 1700. I think it's in DU. Is it? No, it's in parts per billion. Parts per billion in a band of methane going across the equator in the same place that the carbon dioxide is over here. So obviously it appears to me that carbon dioxide is from methane, and there was a lot of methane released. Formaldehyde gas comes from fires. Typically, some of that could be. This is total column formaldehyde. If you look at the 50 hectopascal level, not so much, right? Green, what is this in DU? Something like that. It's in 10 to the 15 molecules per square centimeter. So, which is astonishing that they can even measure that, or that, what I mean, that they will confidently see, oh yeah, that's what that is. I mean, wow, it's amazing. So again, total column, there's your ozone. And when you look at the ozone over Siberia, it's a lot less. So they don't seem to have quite as much greenhouse gas right over Russia. Makes you wonder what's up with that. Are they using some kind of HARP thing? But there is there's a lot of ozone right over that Baffin Bay area, where it just so happens that it's anomalously warmer. It's anomalously cool over Siberia, and you see less carbon dioxide, less ozone in that same area. And the one thing I wanted to get to here is global. I'm sorry, look at the wrong thing. Let's go up to 50 hectopascals. At that same level where the methane is and where the carbon dioxide is, you see that there is less. Oh, look at this right over here, right over the Great Lakes. At 50 hectopascals, there's a whole bunch of ozone right there. See, there's a little bit less over Siberia, right? Which is, this is definitely an interaction going on, right? But over the equator, and this is in DU, which is Dobson units, right over the equator, there's much less ozone. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag, and it's a shit sandwich, no doubt about it. So, all I'm saying is, and I'm not saying that anybody's necessarily lying. I think we should be concerned about it. But don't spin the shit. Just say what it is, and don't say what it's not. You know what I mean? And I don't think that personally that windmills and solar arrays are necessarily the answer. I mean, that's a regional thing. They've already got a ass pile of solar wind farms in Texas, and they've got solar arrays all over the place because your electric company wants to be able to create energy as cheaply as possible, and then turn around and retail it to you for as much as they possibly can, because it's a business. They want to make as much money as possible. So it's all just one big giant racket. It's just a big giant. It is, and but I want to show you. This is hilarious. We're talking about Texas. It's and it's the strangest thing because Texans, they want war with the Middle East and cheap oil and all this other stuff, but you go to Texas and they've got more windmills and solar farms than anybody else in the country. Yeah, it's not really as compelling, but there used to be years ago when you would look at the grid, there would be and it doesn't look like that now. So maybe they changed some stuff. I don't know. But it used to be you had these transmission lines that would go from one part of the country to the other. They would go across the country, and then Texas looked like it was outlined in high power lines. I mean, you could see the whole outline of Texas. It had its own grid and shit. So, but it doesn't look like that now. So, all right. Okay. Who knows? But anyway, that's it. That's all I got. And that's Rick Perry did that. And he was for a while there, he was the energy secretary. And then he ended up being like on the board of directors or something for an Eastern European gas company or something. And I don't remember where that was necessarily. I want to say it was Ukraine or something like that, but I don't remember exactly. Don't hold me to that. And it's this, it's the energy sector it's strangely incestuous in a way. You know what I mean? Because it's regional, I guess you got to do what you got to do wherever you got to do it. I mean, if you got wind, you want to take advantage of it. If you got sun, if you're in the desert, put up some solar panels and send that stuff down the line, whatever. But like I said, nuclear, small nuclear reactors, NuScale, I'm a bigger believer in NuScale. Looked at some of their data, and and of course Bill Bill Gates is doing nuclear, and they've got some interesting stuff. The small nuclear reactors is the way to go to me. You know, you got the energy density, and that's it. So, you know, I would just say don't freak out. You know what I mean? Just act appropriately. But, you know, again, it's like this cult of personality thing. Here they have that this guy's a distinguished professor at Penn State, Michael Mann, and his name is like not anywhere on here in text. It's not in the, you know, Greta Thunberg says blah blah blah. You know what I mean? And he is like this guy is like not mentioning it as though he's like a pariah. Maybe he is. I don't know. You know? It's almost like he's a pariah, which is fascinating. I don't know. Because, you know, there's some things you mention it and people just check out. As soon as they hear the words, they check out. So anyway, that's all I got. It's a shit sandwich and everybody's going to have to take a bite. And if you don't think this is going to do something, you don't think that some shit's going to go down and it's going to be unpredictable like it is right now. I mean, dude, come on, man. How predictable is that? I mean, is this cogent thing, right, spinning around? There it is. Let me see that. Oh, come on. I mean, average temperature. That's still an average? No, that's max. So there's your average temperature, and it's cold as hell there. So anyway, you saw that the reactive gases are less. And just real quick, and I'll shut up, CO2 and water vapor, the amount of CO2 that's in the atmosphere is very temperature sensitive. What's the temperature of sublimating dry ice, which is CO2? And how cold does it have to be to sublimate that CO2 out of the atmosphere? Or to get it to coalesce into water droplets and just come out in the snow? You know? So cold temperatures suck that CO2 right out of the atmosphere. It's just bottom line. And that's stuff that any, you know, first year atmospheric science person, you know, wannabe whatever is going to find out. Like pretty much, I don't know, maybe not. Because it's like, you know, I don't know. It is what it is, but that's a thing, you know, and that's a feedback. So the more, right, it gets cold, the colder it gets, the more reactive gases get sublimated, get turned into a solid, solidified in the ice, rain out of the atmosphere. The colder it gets, right? That's a feedback loop also, but it's a cold producing feedback loop. So that's it. My name is R. Crosby Lyles. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you. You know, take care. It's always a good idea to have communication devices like shortwave radio. You can get them real cheap. I don't sell any of that crap. I don't sell anything here. You know, I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to convince anybody about anything. I monetize my videos because, yeah, I think YouTube should get paid. You know, and like I get like, you know, YouTube doesn't pay, you know, so it's just something that I do because I just, you know, it's a service. People are, you know, it's just so much bullshit out there. I just want to cut through the bullshit. You know what I mean? Just tell it like it is. Cut through the bullshit. Get everybody to fucking pull their heads out their asses, you know, and you know, and move on with some sort of like intelligence, You know, it's like we let the dumbasses, you know, like we let the tards run the play field. We let the retards run the play field, the playground long enough. They need to be reined in, you know, so we can do what actually needs to be done, if anything. You know, how long is that going to last? What's it really going to do? These are discussions we need to have. And one thing we don't need to be doing is deregulating the sulfur emissions out of things like ship, the fuel they use in, the diesel fuel they use in ships. I took a cruise 2 years ago. The stuff coming out of the stack was basically invisible. You couldn't really see it. It didn't look like smoke. And then a year after that, they said, oh, there's this new process where they can take out the sulfur with seawater or some bullshit like this, and it's like looked like white smoke. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's, yeah, I know what that is. You know, there's so much sea traffic out there that, you know, when you deregulate sulfur emissions, when you deregulate sulfur content of ship fuel, you are going to produce a problem. You know, it's like what they want to do. They want to turn, you know, they want a smoke screen. It's a hit and run robbery. So fuck them. Anyway, that's it. My name is R. Crosby Lyles. I love you guys. Get a fucking ham radio. You know, get yourself some food supplies and water and stuff like that, and extra pet food and medication for yourself, whatever, you know. Kind of stock up. Funny that the pandemic came around right around the same time as all this stuff. Hosted by the Chinese, pretty much. Some people are calling it the CCP virus. You know, please. You know, well, whatever, you know. Interesting timing, but, you know, who knows? And that's it. Love you guys. Take care. Peace out.